My fiancée demanded I choose between her and my dog, so I chose loyalty, left quietly, and my dog and I never looked back once. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and until recently, I thought I had everything figured out. A stable job, a cozy little house just outside the city, and my best friend in the world, a golden retriever named Max. I got him right after my dad passed away. Back then, I was in a really dark place, drinking too much, sleeping too little, just existing. Max was the one thing that got me out of bed. He'd nudge my hand every morning, tail wagging like he was saying, "We've got another day to live, buddy." Then came Emily. I met her at a friend's barbecue, and from the moment she smiled at me, I felt something shift. She was smart, witty, and had this calm energy that made me feel safe. When she said she loved dogs, I remember thinking, finally, someone who gets it. The first few months were everything I'd ever wanted. Movie nights, long drives, lazy. Sunday mornings with Max curled between us on the couch. She'd laugh when Max tried to sit in her lap or when he stole socks from the laundry basket. She even joked that he was the other man in our relationship. I thought she adored him. But looking back, there were signs. Tiny ones, subtle enough to miss. She'd flinch when Max licked her face. She'd pull his fur off her clothes with this faint look of disgust. Once, when he jumped onto the bed, she said, "He should really learn boundaries." I brushed it off as her adjusting to pet life. I didn't know it then, but those small comments were the cracks forming beneath the surface. Cracks that would soon split open everything I loved. And it all started with a single, innocent question she asked one night. It was a quiet Sunday evening when the first real argument happened. Emily and I had just finished dinner, candles still flickering, plates half empty, and Max came trotting over, tail wagging, hoping for a few scraps. I chuckled and tossed him a small piece of chicken, something I'd done hundreds of times before. But Emily's expression hardened instantly. "Can we not do that at the table?" she said, her voice tight. "It's gross." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She crossed her arms, eyes fixed on Max like he'd just ruined her evening. I mumbled an apology and told Max to lie down. He obeyed, curling up by my feet, confused. The air went cold after that. From then on, small things became big things. She'd sigh when Max barked at the mailman, complain about fur on the couch, or roll her eyes when I took too long on our evening walks. "You baby him too much," she'd say. "He's a dog, not a child." At first I tried to explain. I told her Max wasn't just a dog. He was family. He'd been there when no one else was. But Emily would smile that tired, dismissive smile and say, "I just want a clean, peaceful home." Is that too much to ask? I started brushing off the tension, convincing myself it was normal relationship adjustment. Everyone has differences, right? Maybe she just needed time to get used to sharing space with a big, goofy golden retriever. But deep down, I noticed something shift. Not in her, but in me. I started hesitating before calling Max onto the couch, second-guessing myself before giving him treats. It felt like I was slowly being trained, one quiet sigh at a time. And that's when I realized the problem wasn't Max. It was the way Emily looked at him, like he was competition. And the night she finally said those words out loud, everything changed. It started with a single sentence that hit harder than I expected. "You know, sometimes I feel like you love that dog more than me." Emily said it casually like she was joking, but her tone had that sharp edge, the kind that hides truth behind a smile. I froze mid-bite, unsure if she was teasing or testing me. I tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Em, you know that's not true." But she didn't laugh back. She just looked at me, long, quiet, and disappointed, before turning back to her food. From that day, everything changed. She began using silence as a weapon. If I took Max out for longer than usual, she'd stop talking to me for hours. When I got home from work and went to greet Max first, she'd mutter, "Figures." The guilt started to seep in, slowly, quietly, until I found myself trying to make it up to her in ways that made no sense. I'd skip Max's evening walks to watch movies with her. I'd shorten playtime so she wouldn't roll her eyes. I thought I was keeping the peace, but really, I was shrinking. One night, my best friend Jake dropped by and noticed it right away. "Man, you don't seem like yourself," he said while Max rested his head on my lap. Emily was in the other room, pretending not to listen. I forced a smile and said, "Just trying to balance things, you know." Jake looked at me for a moment, then at Max. "Balance is one thing. Losing yourself is another." I didn't say anything, but his words stuck in my head. Emily had made me believe compromise was love, but somehow love had started to feel like walking on eggshells, and I didn't realize just how deep her control ran, until she used our engagement as the next tool. When I proposed to Emily, I thought it would fix everything. I planned it perfectly. A quiet evening on the balcony, fairy lights, her favorite wine, and Max lying nearby, tail thumping softly. She said yes with tears in her eyes, and for a brief moment I thought all the tension was behind us. I honestly believed love could smooth out the rough edges. But almost overnight, something in her changed. It wasn't dramatic, just subtle at first. She started talking about our future, our home, our family, but there was never a we when it came to Max. One morning, she brought it up while scrolling through Pinterest wedding boards. "You know, once we're married, we should start fresh. A new house, new energy. Maybe it's time to rethink some things," I frowned. "Rethink what?" She hesitated for a second, then said, "Like having a dog inside all the time. Married life is different, babe. We'll have guests, kids someday. It should feel clean." I laughed nervously, waiting for her to say she was joking. She didn't. Instead, she kept talking about how her coworker's husband had allergies and how a home with pets always smells. I just sat there, trying to mask the sting in my chest. That night, as Max curled up beside me on the bed, Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "He's not sleeping here once we're married. You know that, right?" The tone was final. Not a discussion, a declaration. I tried reasoning with her, telling her Max had slept beside me for years, that he was family. She sighed like I was being childish. "You need to start putting your real family first." Those words hit harder than she knew, because for me, family was loyalty, and Max had never once made me choose. But Emily? She was about to make that demand sooner than I ever imagined. It happened on a Friday night, the kind of night that starts off ordinary and ends up changing everything. I'd just gotten home from work, exhausted, with Max jumping at my legs, tail wagging like always. Emily was sitting at the dining table, arms folded, a glass of wine half empty in front of her. I could tell from the look on her face that something was coming. She didn't waste time. "We need to talk," she said flatly. I sat down across from her, my stomach tightening. "Okay, what's going on?" Her eyes darted toward Max, who was now lying peacefully under the table. "I can't do this anymore. The dog. The mess. The constant attention you give him. It's too much," I blinked, trying to process. "Too much. Emily, he's part of my life. She cut me off. "No, he's your priority, and I'm tired of coming second to an animal." Her words were sharp, final, like she'd been rehearsing them for weeks. I tried reasoning, explaining that Max didn't replace her. He'd been there before her. That love wasn't a competition. But she wasn't hearing any of it. Then she said it. The line that still echoes in my head. "It's me or the dog. You can't have both." The silence afterward was suffocating. Even Max lifted his head, sensing the shift. My mind raced, heart pounding, and for a second I actually thought she might be bluffing. But then she stood up, grabbed her keys, and said, "Call me when you decide what's more important, your pet or your future." The door slammed behind her. Max whimpered softly, crawling closer, resting his head on my knee. And in that quiet, trembling moment, I realized I wasn't just choosing between her and my dog, I was choosing between control and loyalty. And somewhere deep down, I already knew which one I'd pick. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No messages from Emily, no calls. Just that hollow, post-argument quiet that lingers in the air like fog. I spent most of the day walking Max through the park, trying to think clearly. Every logical part of me said, You can fix this. Just talk it out. But the other part, the one that had been shrinking for months, whispered, "Why do you need to beg to keep what's already yours?" That night my phone finally buzzed. It wasn't Emily. It was my friend Sarah, someone who used to work with her. "Hey," she texted, "I probably shouldn't say this, but this isn't the first time she's done this." I called her immediately, confusion flooding my voice. "What do you mean?" Sarah hesitated. Her last fiancé. She made him get rid of his cat. Said she couldn't live with the smell or the hair. He actually did it, and she still broke things off 6 months later. I went completely still. A sick feeling hit me like a wave. All those little comments Emily made, "You baby him too much," "He's too attached," "I just want peace," suddenly sounded rehearsed, recycled. This wasn't about fur or barking. It was about control. When I confronted Emily later that night, she didn't deny it. In fact, she twisted it. "So now you're checking up on me? Talking to my friends behind my back. Wow." She laughed bitterly. "Maybe if you cared this much about our relationship instead of your dog, we wouldn't be here." I stared at her, realizing for the first time that nothing I said would ever be enough. She wasn't jealous of Max. She was jealous of anything I loved that didn't revolve around her. And that's when I realized this wasn't a relationship anymore. It was a quiet war. After that confrontation, things between us were never the same. It was like someone had flipped a switch in her. The warmth vanished, replaced by this icy politeness that made every room feel colder. She stopped saying, "Good morning," stopped reaching for my hand, stopped laughing at the little things Max did. The house, once filled with background noise, paws tapping, laughter, soft music, became dead silent. Every time Max came near her, she'd stiffen. Once, when he brushed against her leg, she muttered, "God, he's always in the way." I told her to stop snapping at him. She shot me a glare that could have frozen fire. Maybe if you trained him better, he wouldn't act like a toddler. I started spending more time outside with Max. Evening walks turned into long drives. We'd sit by the lake, just the two of us, watching the city lights shimmer on the water. I remember petting his head and whispering, "I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to drag you into this." But the more distance I created to protect my peace, the angrier Emily became. "You're avoiding me," she said one night, standing in the doorway while I packed Max's leash. "I'm just taking him out. It's midnight," she snapped. "You'd rather be with him than me." I didn't answer, because the truth was, yes. I'd rather be out there in the quiet with my dog than trapped in a house that felt like a stranger's home. The worst part? Max started reacting too. He'd bark when she raised her voice, flinch when she moved too fast. His tail, once a golden blur of joy, hung low most days. I kept telling myself I could fix it, that she'd calm down, that this was just stress. But I was lying to myself. And I had no idea that soon she'd cross a line I could never forgive. It was raining the night everything broke. Not just drizzling, the kind of hard, relentless rain that soaks through your clothes in seconds. I was working late, trying to hit a deadline, when my neighbor, Mrs. Green, called. Her voice trembled. "Sweetheart, I don't want to alarm you," she said, "but I think your dog's been outside for a while. He's scratching at the door and it's pouring out here." My stomach dropped. "What?" I grabbed my keys, barely hearing the rest. My heart pounded as I sped home through the sheets of rain. When I pulled into the driveway, my headlights caught Max, soaked, shivering, his fur plastered against his body. He looked up at me with those eyes, hurt, confused, desperate. I sprinted to him, shouting his name. His tail wagged weakly as I threw off my jacket and wrapped it around him. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely unlock the door. When I stepped inside, Emily was on the couch, dry, calm, watching TV. "What the hell, Emily?" I shouted. "Why was he outside?" She barely glanced up. He was barking and scratching at the door while I was on a call. I told him to stay out there until he learned. "He's a dog," I yelled, my voice breaking. "You left him in the storm." She rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting." He's fine, but he wasn't fine. He was trembling, eyes wide, breathing unevenly. I sat on the floor, holding him, feeling the weight of every compromise I'd made. Every time I'd kept quiet, every time I'd chosen peace over principle, something inside me cracked open. I didn't shout again. I didn't cry. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone cold enough to hurt the one being who'd only ever shown unconditional love. That was the moment I knew. I was done. But I didn't leave right away. No, I waited, and when I finally did, I made sure it was quiet. The next morning, the house felt like a crime scene. Everything looked the same. The coffee pot humming, sunlight creeping through the curtains. But underneath, everything had changed. Emily was humming in the kitchen like nothing had happened. Max was asleep beside my bed, still damp despite the towels I'd used to dry him. I sat there for a long time, just watching him breathe, his chest rising and falling, and I made my decision. I didn't tell her. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. While she went to work that afternoon, I started packing. Quietly, methodically. Just the essentials. Some clothes, my laptop, a few keepsakes, and everything Max owned. His leash, his toys, his food bowls, his worn-out blanket, the one with the bite marks she used to complain about. Every sound felt amplified. The zip of the suitcase, the rustle of the leash, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I walked through each room, remembering how I thought this house would be our home. Now, it just felt hollow. Before leaving, I placed the engagement ring on the kitchen counter. Next to it, I left one of Max's old chew toys, the one Emily once tried to throw away. I didn't write a note. I didn't need to. The silence would say enough. As I closed the door behind me, Max looked up at me with that familiar tilt of his head, as if asking, "Are we really leaving?" I smiled softly. "Yeah, buddy. We're going home." We drove without music. Just rain on the windshield and Max's head resting on my arm. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. Just an eerie calm, like taking the first full breath after being underwater for too long. I didn't realize it yet, but that quiet exit would become the loudest statement I ever made, and Emily wasn't about to take it quietly. The first few days after leaving felt unreal. I stayed with my friend Jake, sleeping on his couch while Max curled up beside me every night like a guard dog who finally had his purpose back. I didn't tell many people what happened, just that the engagement was off. But Emily, she didn't let it end quietly. It started with texts. Long paragraphs, then shorter ones. "You didn't even try. You abandoned me. After everything I gave you, you chose a dog?" At first, I didn't respond. Then came the voicemails, her voice cracking, then shifting from tears to venom in the span of seconds. "You're pathetic, you know that. You'll die alone with that mutt." I deleted them all. Blocked her number. But then she started reaching out through mutual friends, twisting the story, saying I had anger issues, that I was obsessed with my pet. One even called me asking, "Man, did you really pick your dog over her?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was ridiculous how blind I'd been. Every day, Max seemed lighter. His tail wagged again. He'd bring me toys, follow me from room to room, and sleep peacefully. It was like watching him heal in real time, and realizing I was healing too. One night, I sat on Jake's porch with a beer in hand, Max lying beside me. Jake looked over and said, "You did the right thing, man. Some people demand love. Others just give it. You picked the one who never asked you to change." I didn't reply, just looked at Max, his head resting on my shoe, eyes half closed in peace. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt around Emily in a long time: safety. But life has a strange sense of irony, because not long after, karma found its way back to her. It was about 6 months later when I heard from a mutual friend, the kind of message that makes you stop mid-scroll. "Hey, just thought you should know. Emily's engaged again." For a second, I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not jealousy, just a quiet kind of disbelief. Same city, same ring style, even the same captions on her posts. Found my forever. But then I saw the pictures. Him, a guy named Brandon. Clean-cut, smiling, arm around her like I used to do. And next to them, a caption that made me laugh out loud. Finally, a man who puts me first. I scrolled past it and didn't think much more, until a few weeks later when Sarah texted me again. Guess what? She wrote. She did it again. I called her, half expecting it to be a joke. It wasn't. Turns out Emily had demanded Brandon get rid of his dog too. A husky named Luna. He refused. Things escalated. She screamed, cried, and even threw his things out of their apartment. He ended it 2 weeks later. Publicly. It was like déjà vu. But this time, I wasn't the one bleeding. Sarah said she saw Emily at a cafe afterward, crying to her friend saying, "Why does no one ever choose me?" That line stuck with me. Because it wasn't that no one chose her. It's that she didn't understand what love actually was. Love isn't control. It isn't ultimatums. It's not about who sacrifices more. It's about who stays when it's inconvenient. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach out. I just closed my phone, turned to Max, and tossed him his favorite ball. He caught it midair, tail wagging furiously, and in that moment I realized something simple but powerful. She wanted to be chosen. I just finally chose right, and for the first time in years, I was truly, completely free. It's been over a year since I walked out of that house, and some nights, I still think about how quiet it was when I closed that door for the last time. But now, that silence doesn't hurt. It feels peaceful. The kind of quiet that means freedom, not fear. Max and I have our own little place now, a small house near the woods. Every morning, I wake up to sunlight streaming through the curtains and Max snoring beside me, his paws twitching in dreams. We take long walks down the trail, where he chases butterflies and splashes through puddles like the puppy he once was. I used to think healing was this big, dramatic process, but really, it's made of small, ordinary moments that start to feel like life again. Sometimes people still ask me if I ever think about Emily, if I regret choosing my dog over love. And I tell them the truth. I didn't choose between love and a pet. I chose between conditional love and unconditional loyalty. Between someone who wanted to own my happiness and someone who simply shared it. One evening, I was sitting on the porch watching the sunset, the sky burning gold and pink, when Max rested his head on my lap. He looked up at me with those same eyes that had seen me through grief, loneliness, heartbreak, everything. I laughed softly and said, "She wanted me to prove my loyalty, didn't she?" His tail thumped once against the wooden floor. "I did," I whispered. "Just not the way she expected." The wind moved through the trees, carrying away the last trace of bitterness I'd ever felt, because in the end, I didn't just keep my dog. I kept my heart, and as far as I'm concerned, that's the best decision I've ever made.